pretty funny, huh?
Yeah.
On This Way Out this week, Kent Opera makes a comeback, but it's for one night only. Weatherman Bill Giles tells us about his one-man show. No access for wheelchairs, why disabled people still get a bad deal. And Fantastic Fantastics, Roy Hudd stars in the world's longest-running musical. So join us for This Way Out, tomorrow on TVS.
Add a little Worcester saucery with Lee and Perrins.
And here at the Nantwich International Cheese Show, the big question mark is, will Anchor Cheddar win yet another prize? Year after year, the judges award Anchor more prizes than any other cheddar. But will Anchor win again? You might as well ask, do mice love cheese?
Most compact detergents rely on a softener to get clothes soft. New Bold Ultra doesn't. It's all in one, and that saves you money.
According to the law of averages, one day soon, all cars will be equal. Is it not true, however, that one car will always be more equal than others? The new Ford Escort breaks the law of averages.
She was around at the time of Waterloo, you know. Survived the Industrial Revolution.
Really?
Oh, yes. Then came through 2 world wars. And a depression.
Doesn't look very depressed now, I must say.
No. Scottish Widows has been going from strength to strength for over 175 years, which might come as a bit of a blow for the competition.
If your local news program has twice been voted the best in Britain, you know why you're watching TVS.
At 10:40 tonight, there's suspense from the master when Hitchcock presents a tale of seduction and murder. You're watching TVS.
There now follows a party political broadcast by the Liberal Democrats.
Above all, our politics places at its heart not the need always to reap a benefit for ourselves today, but the imperative to create a better world for our children tomorrow.
Paddy Ashdown, leader of the Liberal Democrats, speaking last week in Blackpool at the party's highly successful conference.
In this interview, he spells out the convictions that so clearly distinguish the Liberal Democrats from the two old parties.
And this brings me back to the central message of our party. People say to me, why should I vote for you? I say, if you want to vote for yourself, then don't bother to vote for us. Go and vote for Tory or Labour, that's fine. But if you want to vote for your children, that's a vote for us. Because what we do today, even if it costs us more today, is to create that better society, safer environment, better education system, more prosperous economy, a full part to play in Europe in the years to come. A seed planted now to flower for those who follow after us in the next decade. There are those who say that Britain can't afford to invest in the future. I say that Britain can't afford not to invest in the future. The two old parties, Labour and the Tories, you know, they keep on talking about the past. They keep on blaming each other for the past. Well, that's not surprising. That's where they live. They're parties of the past. Britain needs a decent alternative to both of them, and I often feel that I'm not just fighting Labour and Tory, two other parties, I'm fighting one big, old, fat party that has governed Britain for these last 40 years. Let therefore this be what they say of us, that we are prepared to risk the popularity of our party, but we will never, never, never risk the future of our planet. The thing I suppose motivates me more powerful than anything else is the fact that there is so much that could be done with the resources that we have, the people that we have, the environment that we have, the position we have, our role in Europe, our standing in international affairs. And what I want to see is build on those forces to produce a better Britain. I'm optimistic about that, but I'm angry about the way we've wasted those chances in the past. For their friends, the Tories have kept prices low all right. After all, if you were a Tory friend, this was the decade when you could buy a pint of best bitter and 3 Westminster cemeteries and still have change for £1. I get angry about the thousands of millions of poor who have been simply left out in Britain. I get angry when I wander down the Strand in London and look at that affluent part of our city, in the doorways of the shops of which at night sleep men and women, young men and young women, the thickness of a plate glass window away from jobs advertised for skills they've never been allowed to get. For us, the real task in Britain is not so much the redistribution of wealth as the redistribution of opportunity in our land. Liberal means open, generous, compassionate. And we need that. God knows we need that when I see so many in our country today simply left out by the selfishness, the self-centeredness of the Thatcher years. If we can set Britain firmly on the road to economic, social and political reform, this could be a great country again by the year 2000, with clean cities and a green countryside, with flourishing industry and high-quality services, educated, confident. That is our vision. That is our task. That is our cause.
If you'd like more information or would like to join the Liberal Democrats, please dial 100 and ask for free phone Liberal Democrats, or write to 4 Cowley Street, London SW1P 3NB.
That was a party political broadcast by the Liberal Democrats.
Identical sisters are the subject of Hitchcock's murder mystery, which you can catch at 10:40 tonight.
Terrorists plant a bomb under the noses of the police. A private security firm says it wasn't up to us to find it. Britain and Iran resume relations, new hope for the hostages. Salman Rushdie says tonight, I still fear assassination. And Britain's beef and sheep farmers say they're going out of business. Good evening. Police are investigating tonight how they failed to spot a bomb planted at a conference on terrorism in London. It was found by accident taped under a lectern in the hours before a government minister and the Metropolitan Police Commissioner were due to speak. An ITN camera crew saw a sound engineer discover the device. Police say it would have killed the speaker and others there. They say they searched the building 2 hours before the conference began. A private firm handling security at the conference says it wasn't its responsibility to check for bombs.
Tonight, the question being asked is how could terrorists have found their way to the very heart of a major conference on terrorism itself? Delegates from all over the world were gathering at the Royal Overseas League in central London when the bomb, high explosives attached to a timing device, was found inside the speaker's lectern by the banqueting manager and a sound technician.
I noticed that the lectern, which is going to be used for today's speakers, had been tampered with. Myself and our audio-visual presenter checked the lectern and we discovered a device underneath it.
I bend down and I look under the top base and I saw this object, which was sort of, you got a double-sided tape, Velcro tape, attached to it, onto the top section of the lectern.
The streets of St. James came to a standstill as delegates, staff and journalists were evacuated several hundred yards from the building. Within minutes, members of the bomb squad arrived and the device was disarmed.
It was contained in a plastic lunchbox similar to this that you see here, which I'm holding in my hand. It did in fact contain a sufficient high explosive that had the device exploded, which we believe would have been around about 10:30 a.m. this morning, it would have, of course, caused death and serious injury.
Before the event, conference organisers had published a list of delegates due to attend, which reads like a who's who of the security forces, including senior military personnel who served in Northern Ireland. Also due to speak was the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Peter Imbert, who would have arrived at around 10:50. And Foreign Office Minister William Waldegrave, originally due to speak in the morning, but at the last moment changed to 3:30 in the afternoon. The immediate question was when was the bomb planted and who was responsible for security at the time. At 6 a.m. this morning, police officers with a dog spent around an hour and a half searching the building. The commander of the anti-terrorist squad said he was satisfied the bomb was not there at the time of that search, which means police are looking for someone entering the building between 7:30 and 9 o'clock, during which time security was being handled by the private firm Group 4. Group 4 told ITN it was not their responsibility to check or sweep for explosives. They said they were there to check invitations in accordance with the guest list. ITN technicians were at the scene from shortly after 7 this morning. They said there was a steady flow of people into the rear fire door with no one apparently checking them.
I think perhaps the lapse occurred between the bomb squad leaving and the arrival on site of Group 4 security. Certainly when we were coming and going into the St Andrews Hall, where the conference venue was, there seemed to be no apparent check on security.
I was asked who I was, and when I said I'm Neil Hamilton, ITN cameraman, a pass was given to me and I just carried on from there.
But did you produce your own identity?
It wasn't asked for at all, no.
We must obviously take the responsibility as we were the organisers of the conference, but by engaging a professional security firm and particularly by having such close liaison with the police, we felt that we had done what was necessary. In hindsight, it clearly wasn't quite sufficient.
So what should have been a step forwards in countering attacks by terrorists has turned into a major propaganda coup for them. There will be many tonight for whom that is a very considerable source of regret. Robin White, News at 10, Central London.
Britain and Iran have resumed diplomatic relations. The Foreign Secretary, Mr. Douglas Hurd, said embassies would be opened in Tehran and London within a month. Iran broke off diplomatic ties last year over the Salman Rushdie affair. Now there's fresh hope for the release of the 3 British hostages held in Lebanon.
Iran's foreign minister in genial mood. Success at last for a diplomatic courtship that's been going on for months.
Both embassies will be reopened within 1 month. And I thank you very much.
The officials Douglas Hurd took with him to New York had quietly made contact with their Iranian counterparts. With both sides there for the UN General Assembly, it was a perfect opportunity. And for the Foreign Secretary, it could mean an end to Britain's long hostage crisis.
The Iranians say they have what they call humanitarian influence over the people who are holding them, and they will use that humanitarian influence.
The resolution of the Rushdie affair was the key. To repair the damage done by the alleged insult to Islam in the book The Satanic Verses, the Foreign Secretary wrote a letter expressing respect for Islam. The Iranians haven't lifted the death sentence against Mr. Rushdie, but they've indicated they no longer want it carried out.
Well, what the Iranians have said is that their policy, the policy of the Iranian government, is not to interfere in the internal affairs of any other country, just as Britain doesn't in the internal affairs of any other country. Now, you have to read between the lines of that.
The fate of Roger Cooper, a British businessman jailed in Tehran and accused of spying, remains a source of friction. But those who've campaigned for his release believe today's development will help him.
I think it opens the door to Roger's case being treated on its merits, which is something we've been waiting for 4 years. We've had a year and a half of hostilities between Iran and Britain, and that hasn't done him any good. He's been a sort of political football in this time. So I hope this will lead to a rapid resolution of his case.
As for Britain's hostages in Beirut, Terry Waite, John McCarthy and Jack Mann, Britain will expect Iran to start putting pressure on the kidnappers as soon as possible.
My reaction is that it is good news. It doesn't remove all the problems. It does not of itself bring the British hostages out of Lebanon or solve any of the other problems that exist between the two countries. But it's a damn sight easier to solve those problems with diplomatic relations than without them.
Iran's President Hashemi Rafsanjani has been working towards closer relations with the West since the beginning of the year. And with that in mind, he's been forthright in his condemnation of Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. That may have been the final piece needed to complete the diplomatic jigsaw.
18 months ago, Salman Rushdie was an author enjoying immense success. At the height of his literary powers and about to publish his new novel, The Satanic Verses. But that book was denounced by the Iranian leadership as blasphemous. And for the last 18 months, Rushdie has been in constant hiding. Calls for his assassination triggered a unique special branch operation to provide the author with protection around the clock. Today, the television presenter Melvyn Bragg reveals he's just interviewed Salman Rushdie and says the author has stood up remarkably well to his ordeal. The latest photograph of the author has also been released. And Rushdie tonight made it known to ITN he welcomed the resumption of diplomatic relations between Britain and Iran. Rushdie also said Melvyn Bragg could speak on his behalf to News at 10.
Well, we all hope it'll end happily, that the fatwa will be lifted, that Iran will give believable assurances that it will control the mercenaries and the hotheads and the zealots who want to come and kill him, and that he can begin to lead some sort of qualified normal life. That's what everybody hopes for. And certainly this is a step in that direction, and he's the first to recognize that. But it's the first step, and there are 1 or 2 others.
Iraq has reversed a warning to Western diplomats that they could be hanged for harbouring fellow nationals in their embassies. Tonight's reassurance followed strong protests from the United States and Britain about the original warning. Iraq also announced that more than 1 million foreigners would not be given food ration coupons from next week.
Tented camps in the grounds of some embassies here are temporary homes for foreigners who are not allowed to leave the country. Here they've sought sanctuary in the time-honoured way. But the Iraqi authorities now want to know just who they all are, and they sent a note to various embassies demanding information about these people, which didn't seem to be in very diplomatic language.
Well, the note was in 2 parts. First of all, it reminded embassies that there was a law against the harbouring of foreign nationals with very severe punishment, indeed death, for it. And it then asked embassies to say whether they had their own nationals or other foreign nationals in their properties. The British government's reaction is a flat rejection of the note as being against international law, And of course, we're referring to the total inviolability of diplomatic premises. So we flatly reject it.
This evening, the Minister of Information was asked why such a strong note had been sent.
In fact, this is just a misunderstanding. It is a mistake.
And he explained that there was no threat at all to diplomats. The government was just restating the law and wanting all foreigners to be registered. In another move, employees of foreign companies have been told that from next Monday, their food supplies cannot be guaranteed and that they'll have to import their own. 2 points emerged today. First, the Iraqis' quick admission of a mistake and misunderstanding in their note to foreign embassies shows that they want to keep diplomatic channels to the West clear. Secondly, the announcement of food cutbacks for foreigners indicates that sanctions are biting, and this possibility of Westerners going hungry is one way of applying pressure on the West to break those sanctions. Desmond Hamill, News at 10, Baghdad.
Here, Esso has joined Texaco and put up its petrol prices. The price of 4-star will go up by 6.4 pence a gallon from midnight. In the United States, Congress was asked tonight to approve the release for sale of 15 million barrels of the country's strategic reserves. It's an attempt to contain prices. The energy watchdog, the International Energy Agency, is expected to ask other governments to do the same when it meets tomorrow.
Salt caverns in Louisiana, USA, some taller than New York's highest skyscrapers, storage for America's war chest of oil, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The reserve's been built up since the early 70s. It's now being used for the first time, and there's speculation about how effectively its pumping systems will work. President Bush has ordered the sale of strategic oil to calm markets which fear the consequences of war in the Gulf.
There is no justification for intensive and unwarranted speculation in oil futures.
And oil market prices did fall back today. World production before the Gulf crisis was about 52 million barrels a day. With Iraqi and Kuwaiti fields cut, it fell to about 48 million. Most of the shortfall will be made up by other countries, but not for a few more weeks. America has strategic reserves of 590 million barrels. 15 million is set to be released. Japan has 200 million barrels in reserve, and Europe 70 million. These stocks have sat idly in tanks while market prices have doubled. The energy watchdog, the IEA, is now set to recommend to governments that they use some of this oil. Industry leaders feel it's too soon to use the reserves.
There's a shortage of some products, but of course these strategic reserves are mostly crude. In fact, they're all crude pretty well. I would have thought it was premature to do it, frankly. If there is a war, if there is a real crisis, that's the time to do it.
But some analysts say the reserve oil must be got into the system now.
If we wait until the shooting war actually starts, it will be some while before that crude arrives at your and my doorstep in the form of refined products. And that could be 6 weeks, it could be even longer.
While the debate continues, motorists will probably pay prices for petrol which continue to be driven higher by the international oil markets.
British beef and sheep farmers' income was down by 40% last year due to foreign imports and falling sales. Some farmers say they don't know how they'll survive, a report in part 2. Also, Soviet workers ask who'd want to buy a share in our privatized factory, and East Germany prepares to hand over its MiGs to NATO. That's in a couple of minutes.
Amazing performance. I had lunch with them last week. Apparently they've installed compact computers. They're now leading our spy.
If you're looking for the best in personal computing, you should follow any leads you can get.
Every day, over 3 million people wake up with the security of Bupa, because Bupa specializes only in healthcare. It never takes out a penny in profit. Everything goes back into healthcare. So when you're considering private medicine, who do you think is going to offer you a membership scheme that really suits you? Ring 0800 010 383 now. Bupa, purely for the benefit of your health.
Great match last night.
Eh? What match?
Oh, of course, you haven't got BSB. Our game's gone from strength to strength since we had it installed in the clubhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Get connected to BSB and you're plugged into more live football than anywhere else on the Sports Channel.
That number 10. He's a big lad, isn't he?
Yeah. We got high hopes for him.
BSB 5-channel TV. Are you as well connected?
Hello? My company has developed a low-cost solar pump. Is anybody interested?
What language should this man use to talk to overseas customers?
Is anybody there?
It isn't English.
Voulez-vous une pompe solaire?
It isn't French.
Eine Sonnenpumpe Gerät?
It isn't German. Maybe he should try a different language altogether.
Aha!
For this is the business language of the future. And thanks to British Telecom's network, you can speak it anywhere in the world. It can help overseas buyers picture your product instantly. It will even tempt new prospects to phone you free using our international 0800 numbers.
I think we're in business, Derek.
If we've been talking your language, maybe you should start talking ours. For your action pack, call us free on 0800 800 800. British Telecom. It's you we answer to.
An unpublished Ministry of Agriculture report shows that farmers' incomes were nearly halved last year. Cattle and sheep farmers were the worst hit. They blame cheap imports, overproduction and high interest rates. Vernon Mann in the West Country reports on how one group of farmers have been trying to ride the slump.
On the edge of Exmoor now is the time of year that hill farmers bring their cattle down for sale at market and final fattening on the lowlands, an exercise the farmers say is nowadays hardly worth the effort. Ray Bryant, helped by neighbour John Armitage here, reckons he'll be lucky to break even this year. But there's still humour amidst the apparent hopelessness as they load up the lorry. What do you hope to get for these this morning?
As much as possible.
With the cattle go hopes of high prices, but Mr. Bryant is mainly a sheep farmer like John Armitage, today trying to fix their shared antique dung spreader, both only too aware that overproduction and interest rates are making viability a balancing act.
On a smallish hill farm, which this is now, it's on the very edge of viability, and no amount of efficiency will actually keep you out of trouble.
You go without, you don't have all the luxuries that maybe modern people expect.
If you're getting £5 less for your lamb at the end of the day, then you're a perpetual squeeze.
Despite the price drop, another neighbour, David Norman, is selling lambs today. He doubled his acreage 5 years ago, and like the rest, he's finding it tough to keep going.
At the present decline in incomes, with our interest rates, it'd be right we should get out of it now, before the damage gets any worse.
Meanwhile, the cattle auction was underway, the prices offering Ray Bryant little in the way of hope.
Try as we may, I can't make it any better.
When his cattle reached the ring, he joined the auctioneer, in case perhaps a bid was missed. But buyers had to be encouraged. They did sell, but not for much.
Probably £150 a head down on last year's prices alone.
I mean, how long are you going to be able to keep going like this?
It's a question of how long we'll be able to keep going. We don't know. It's getting terrible.
Over the years, farmers have been accused, rightly or wrongly, of crying wolf about their financial situation. They're aware of that, but they do feel aggrieved now that they are facing real problems. No one appears to be taking any notice of them. Maybe it's because no one has an answer. The lamb prices here at rock bottom, like beef. And amongst the buyers, a local butcher, but no cheap lamb in the shops.
We got our money to pay all our expenses, i.e. wages have gone up and everything else, just like everybody else. I feel very sorry for the farmers, but I don't know what else we can do.
Some farmers knew what to do. Appalled at the low prices, they took their sheep out of the auction and home, hoping they might be able to sell them elsewhere for just a few pennies more. Vernon Man News at 10 on Exmoor.
President Gorbachev has used his new emergency powers for the first time. A decree read on radio and television has warned rebel republics they'll be fined if they withhold raw materials. It gives them a month to get supplies back to normal. More workers are showing their concern about the human cost of the economic reforms. Under the new measures, most state industries will be privatized, collective farms will be divided up into private plots, and price controls will be abolished. Our Moscow correspondent, Tim Ewart, reports on the likely effect on Soviet factories and farms.
For some in the Soviet Union, the harsh realities of economic reform have already arrived. This is Moscow's ball bearing factory number 1, built in 1932 in the vanguard of Stalin's industrial revolution. Now the state is relinquishing control to a workers' cooperative, guided by the profit motive. 3,000 people, 14% of the workforce, have already been sacked. Another 2,000 will follow shortly. Modernization will mean further redundancies. It's taken more than 4,000 engineers to keep elderly machinery running. Factory director Valery Nosov still works beneath a portrait of Lenin, but it's Mikhail Gorbachev, a visitor here in 1988, who's his inspiration. Nosov is anxious to shake off the harness of state control and the inefficient personnel it's generated. Nowadays, you've got to think, use your head, he says. Not everyone's able to do that. Workers are promised their pay will double, but they'll believe it when they see it. The impending switch to the market economy is viewed with skepticism.
Когда мы зарабатываем, работа тяжелая, зарабатываем 200, 230, 240 рублей. Это не зарплата. А если будет рыночная цена, что тогда можно купить?
Ну, зарплаты я сомневаюсь, что будут рыночные. Может быть, будет какое-то повышение, но не настолько, чтобы мы могли жить так, как нужно.
In Russia's agricultural heartland, there's more than skepticism. To the people here, talk of a market economy is little more than a distant rumble from Moscow. And yet it's in these sodden fields that reform is supposed to begin. The plan favored by Mikhail Gorbachev calls for the privatization of collective farms in the first 100 days of a 500-day program. Farm manager Valia Miranova feels no sense of urgency. I can't imagine how it's going to work, she says, but to be honest, I haven't thought about it. The idea is to rid the system of the sort of ineptitude that's left recently harvested grain rotting in the drizzle and threatens a potato shortage of disastrous proportions. But it depends on the willingness of farm workers to take over and run their own land. There's widespread reluctance.
For people to buy land and to try to start business which will bring profit to them in 2 years and 3 years, you know, it will be a risky undertaking.
70 years of state control have left Soviet workers with little taste for the unpredictable. Mr. Gorbachev's greatest challenge may be motivating a reluctant workforce to keep up with the pace of reform. Tim Ewart, News at 10, Moscow.
East Germany's armed forces will merge with their West German counterparts next week after 45 years. For the West, it's the chance to use some of Eastern Europe's best military hardware. But East German soldiers are worried they'll become part of a new Germany, but without jobs.
The Soviet MiG-29, the backbone of the Warsaw Pact. East Germany owns 20. In 6 days' time, they belong to the West. NATO isn't saying how they'll be used or who'll fly them. The East German pilots are highly trained, but they were trained as communists to attack the West. They're now pleading for their jobs. We never served Marxism or any ideology, he says, just a country. And now we want to serve the new Germany. It's not that simple. This army commander is telling his troops that most of them won't have a place in the new German army. 1 in 4 may make it. NATO can't trust the rest. Once the crack troops of the East, they're now dispirited and depressed. They've lost their enemy, their security, and their ideals.
Now we have to realize that these things were wrong, and we did follow a false policy, and we were instruments of a false policy.
Their commander will watch unification on television on Wednesday and then lose his job. His wife will go back to teaching to support them. The 9th Panzer Division was born in the Cold War as an attack formation. Today, a lone T-72 tank ticks over on a deserted training field. West Germans say most of these vehicles are obsolete, so the East German army is being sold off. You can buy a Jeep for £300. It's a humiliating end. Discipline has gone too. On Wednesday, East Germany ceases to exist, and its armed forces, which lost the Cold War without firing a shot, will become the sacrificial lambs of unification. Bill Neely, News at 10, East Germany.
Here, the sex change model Caroline Cossey has lost her fight to be legally accepted as a woman. She changed her sex in an operation 16 years ago, but today the European Court of Human Rights supported Britain's refusal to let her marry a man. Miss Cossey has no right of appeal. Her solicitor says she's bitterly disappointed.
The main points of the news again. Police are trying to find out how a bomb was placed in a London conference hall just before the start of a conference on terrorism this morning. The bomb was discovered by accident. And Britain and Iran have announced the resumption of diplomatic relations.
Finally, Salisbury magistrates have ordered 389 soldiers to pay their outstanding community charge or poll tax bills ranging from £26 to the full amount of £316. The soldiers, most of whom are stationed on Salisbury Plain, refused to pay because they claim they didn't use local authority services.
The soldiers appearing in court this morning were all based in one of Britain's largest military garrisons. Lark Hill Camp, sprawling on the edge of Salisbury Plain, is more like a small town and houses several army units. The community charge here averages £312. More than 380 bills have not been paid. At Salisbury Magistrates Court today, soldiers claimed they were being asked to subsidise council services they don't require, since Lark Hill is almost self-sufficient.
They gave us a pay rise earlier in the year, and immediately we had to start paying the poll tax, plus they put food and accommodation up, and we ended off worse off than we actually were before we had the pay rise.
The anger felt in Lark Hill's barrack rooms was evident as one by one the servicemen stood up in court to air their grievances. Surely, they argued, theirs was a special case. But the magistrates said the court could not intervene. The law was clear, and the servicemen must now take the matter up with the local council or their MP. The council's application for an order covering all unpaid bills was granted. The MP, whose constituency includes Lark Hill, says there was no alternative.
They do receive services. They receive highway services, street lighting and refuse, and education, and of course housing if and when they leave the army. So they are paying for local services, and therefore they should pay the community charge.
The soldiers, who've been told not to comment on the ruling, may now find the community charge deducted direct from their wages. Robert Hall, News at 10, Salisbury.
And that's the news from us tonight. Good night.
The national weather next is followed by the local news and weather.
Pick a straw, anywhere you like. Hammer go, anyone you fancy. Pick a straw, Stoner crows.
Norman predicted at a very early age just what the future held for him.
I see a bright sun. You're going to join the Foreign Legion.
No.
A courier.
No.
Look, it's definitely a sun. A weatherman?
No. I'm going to work for Sun Alliance, one of the country's biggest insurance companies.
What do you see, Norma?
I'm looking at weather predictions for the 90s.
Ah, well, at least Sun Alliance policyholders will have their help cards. They just ring the help card number day or night, and we immediately arrange for local tradesmen to carry out emergency repairs. What else do you see?
An imminent lunch with a handsome man wearing glasses.
You ready, Norma? Enjoy.
Sun Alliance, the place where Norman works.
This Sunday in the Sunday Times, Mozart, a superb series that brings the man and the music to life and builds over 4 weeks into a valuable work of reference, including exclusive booking for over 100 Mozart concerts. plus a new colour tabloid review section, and a second magazine completely free, Business World. All in the Sunday Times this Sunday.
In a world where so many people are slaves to fashion, some still tread their own path. In a world where comfort is so often sacrificed to style, some people insist on both. In a world of hatchbacks and fastbacks, some people want a car in a class of its own. The new Ford Orion, a modern classic.
It comes every day. I just can't guarantee when. It's a temperamental ghost. You're not the Headless Baron.
No, I'm from Barclays. I think I may be able to help.
Yes, I think you might.
You see, with an unreliable ghost, it may be better to offer weekend breaks rather than hourly visits. And with a flexible loan, you could develop accommodation and even catering.
Let's discuss this in my office.
If you're running a small business or thinking of starting one, talk to Barclays.
Sunday at 7:45 on TVS, George Baker is Chief Inspector Wexford in a new season of Ruth Rendell Mysteries, investigating a grisly murder.
She was a waitress in a club. She was a bit of a liar. She lived in a fantasy.
The Ruth Rendell Mystery, Some Lie and Some Die, Sunday at 7:45.
A sinister murder is committed by one of two identical sisters, but which one? Look into Mirror, Mirror, our Hitchcock presentation in 10 minutes. Right now on TVS, a look at the national weather picture.
Good evening. Southern Britain might get one more fine day tomorrow, but there's already some rain around up in the north and west of Scotland, one or two heavy bursts today, and it is slipping very, very slowly southwards across the rest of Scotland, eventually into Northern Ireland and Northern England, but it may not get there until, well, perhaps very late tomorrow or even into the weekend. Odd showers turning up further south, as you can see. Let's come back to tonight's chart in more detail. Most of the rain, what rain there is in the north and west of Scotland. Still one or two heavy bursts to come, odd showers elsewhere, but really the rest of England and Wales, and to be honest, most of Northern Ireland too, will be generally dry through the night. The lowest temperatures around 4 or 5, that's not as cold as last night. Still cold enough though for one or two mist patches to turn up. For tomorrow, a lot of cloud around over Scotland in general, Northern England and Northern Ireland too, but really any rain in Northern Ireland is likely to be very patchy and quite light, one or two heavier bursts to come for the rest of Scotland, especially in the west. But brighter weather there too during the afternoon, some sunshine turning up in the north. The best of tomorrow's weather is reserved for the rest of England and Wales. A lot of sunshine around, especially in the far south. Further north we look, well, a little bit more cloud around there, but still the odd glimpse of the sun, we think. The highest temperatures, as you might guess, in the best of the sun, down in the south and the southeast too, around 20, that's 68. Further north, right up in the far north, 15, with a fairly strong southwesterly breeze, that's only about 59 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite a changeable picture for the north, some sunshine for the south. Good night.
In the south tonight, soldiers fight the poll tax in a Wiltshire court. An operation on a toddler's hands is postponed through lack of funds. And a campaign is launched to save chimps from extinction. First tonight, a prisoner with a bomb strapped round his neck threatened to blow himself up at Reading Crown Court. 23-year-old Kevin Denton had just been jailed for 4 years. But when he was taken to his cell, he showed warders a bomb he'd attached under his chin. He threatened to blow it up, but they persuaded him to take it off. Bomb squad officers detonated the device. Nearly 400 soldiers based in Wiltshire have been ordered to pay their poll tax. The soldiers are angry they have to pay the community charge because they claim they don't use any council services. Shelley Hunt reports.
Only a dozen soldiers dressed in civvies turned up today at Salisbury's temporary magistrates' court in the cattle market. Yet more than 500 from Bulford and Lark Hill had originally received summonses. They're angry because they claim they don't use any of the council services, and many can't afford to pay the £312 tax anyway.
The Department of the Environment and the PSA provide our needs. They collect their dustbins. You can actually see the guys on camp, the actual soldiers, are sweeping the roads sometimes if we have a visit. So what's the point? Why are we paying?
389 servicemen and women still haven't paid their tax. So today, council officers asked for a block liability order so that they can either collect the tax straight from the soldiers' pay or send in the bailiffs. During the hearing, many of the soldiers tried to make their grievances known to the magistrates, but were told they had to contact their local councillors or MPs. And feelings were still running high after the hearing, when the soldiers were told they were forbidden to talk to the media.
They don't realise that the district council do play a part in collecting their refuse. They're not aware of this, but that is there.
All the council hopes now is that today's court action hasn't tarnished their relationship with the army.
A 3-year-old girl from Sussex will have to do without surgery on her badly deformed hands because of a hospital's financial crisis. Laura Wilcock's parents wanted the operation carried out to stop children teasing her. Natalie Gray reports.
Little Laura Wilcock was born with badly deformed hands. For 2 years she's been waiting for a series of delicate operations to reform her fingers. But now she's been told she could wait for surgery indefinitely. It's all because of a cash crisis at the Queen Victoria Hospital in East Grinstead. The hospital is overspent by £100,000, and until it gets back on target, it's had to cut back services. But Laura's parents are extremely bitter. They say Laura shouldn't have to suffer.
The hospital have done everything they can, and we're extremely pleased with what they have actually done. But the situation is still there, that they haven't got the funds, they can't do the operation, so here's the end result.
She started playgroup recently, and already she's having boys and girls pointing out her fingers, and she's very good about it. She doesn't make a fuss. She shows them her fingers and leaves it at that. But obviously as she gets older, I'm sure she will get to a point where she does mind, she'll be teased and so on.
A spokesman for Tunbridge Wells Health Authority, which runs the hospital, said, "We don't want our doctors to stop operating, but the government only gives us a limited amount of money for surgery." Natalie Gray, Sussex.
A Southampton man has been jailed for 7 years for killing a teenager in a multi-storey car park. 19-year-old Jason Green died from multiple stab wounds last year following a fight outside Raffles nightclub. 23-year-old Neil May was found guilty of manslaughter. A Royal Fleet auxiliary ship, Sir Tristram, sets sail tomorrow to take the first load of equipment to soldiers in the Gulf. It's carrying everything from tanks and armoured vehicles to gas masks for troops and even bottles of washing-up liquid. Sir Tristram has seen action before. She was bombed as she landed troops in the Falklands. A wildlife photographer from Hampshire is fighting to save chimpanzees from the threat of extinction. Andrea Jones has just returned from Central Africa. She says chimps are being treated with appalling cruelty by poachers supplying the pet trade. Chris Peacock reports.
Jojo is a 9-year-old chimpanzee living in wretched conditions in a small cage in Burundi in Central Africa. Her outstretched arms beg to be free. She's upset and confused. Jojo is one of hundreds of chimps who are being poached in neighbouring Zaire and sold to the pet trade.
You can imagine keeping a human child on the end of a 2-foot chain. You can imagine the effect that that would have on that child and the distress it would cause them mentally. And it has the same effect with the chimpanzees. And you can see this in their eyes, and they hold out their hands and they want you to touch them, and you can't help but just want to speak out for them.
Chimpanzees are an endangered species. It's estimated there are less than 250,000 of them left in the world. It's the babies who are poached and sold as pets or for experimentation in laboratories. Redressing the balance will take time, but help is on the way because Andrea is raising £250,000 for a sanctuary where they can be safe and relatively free.
And now for a look at the weather picture for tonight and tomorrow, we join Carl Tyler.
Good evening. Well, it'll be dry again tonight, misty later on, and some patchy fog around dawn, probably a little bit more than we had this morning. Temperatures a little bit up on last night, but still on the chilly side. We're looking for a low of 3, that's only 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, our chart for noon tomorrow, that shows the high pressure beginning to drift away, but close enough in to give us another fine dry day. The front over Scotland could well bring us some showers, but not until late in the weekend. Tomorrow morning then, that mist hanging around for a little while, but should be gone by mid-morning, then dry with a good deal of sunshine. For the afternoon, some patchy fair weather cloud, sunny spells as well, and for a change, a light southwesterly wind. Your best temperature's 19, that's 66. So to summarise then, the mist clearing by mid-morning, then dry with sunny spells.
That's all the TVS news from the south tonight.
They're back, and they're in training yet again in Police Academy 3. Meet the real bright sparks. And the not-so-bright ones.
Yay.
Compulsive viewing.
You dared me, Papa!
But keep the sound down as the world's wackiest cops head in and out of trouble.
What a lobby! Where are we going? Just relax.
The biggest splash in Police Academy 3, Saturday at 9:20 on TVS.
Next tonight, though, Reflections of Murder from Hitchcock.
When it's this easy to recycle, it's not hard to see the attraction of British steel.
Lazy day, a day to drift and dream. Let me stray where water lilies gleam, neath the willows bend.
Now there's a new way to soothe and revive you when you're wound up and worn out. A long soak with new Radox Moments. A unique blend of nature's herbs and fragrant oils. You'll feel restored with Radox. It's second nature.
Ovaltine Light, chocolatey, malty, and only 75 calories for today's Ovaltinis.
They're back.
That's what I call a real woman.
Some people say we're smutty. I don't like being called smutty. And I don't like being called sweet.
The return of Hale and Pace, Sunday at 10:05 on TVS.
In the confines of the prison cell block, Meg has thoughts of becoming a parole and probation officer in half an hour here on TVS. First, though, they have to catch the villain in Mirror, Mirror.